God's not dead. April Fools. It is weird though, isn't it? Like if you're gonna make a propaganda piece, why release it on April Fool's Day? Just marketing wise, it's a really strange call. God's Not Dead 2. So God's Not Dead 2 is the conservative Christian propaganda piece about a teacher who mentions Jesus in the classroom and then the school district tries to fire her. She sticks to her guns. She's like, I didn't do anything wrong, so the case goes to court, so now it's a court movie ultimately. And as I say, it is a propaganda piece. Propaganda doesn't necessarily mean bad for a movie. There are movies out there that technically fall under the propaganda umbrella that I think are well done movies. However, on the reverse for the case of God's Not Dead 2, propaganda doesn't actually mean good either. So the problem with this movie is from the get-go, they start villainizing the other side. They start villainizing atheists. And in a court movie, I like seeing balanced shit. I like seeing, justice with the blindfold and the sword and the scales actually go to work. But in this movie, it's like this girl, her brother died, and then her family's like, hey, can you get his shit out of his room? Yeah, thanks. So she talks to Melissa Joan Hart's character, and Melissa Joan Hart's character talks to her dad, and she's like, oh, I can't believe they're so over it. And he's like, well, that's the thing about atheists. Atheism doesn't take away the pain, it just takes away the hope. I'm like, that's unfair. I'm just saying, man, I've never known an atheist to lose someone and be like, all right, get his shit out of his room, I'm done. I'm just done. I may have heard about a few assholes who have done that, but just they're dicks at that point. It has nothing to do with their belief structure. Or maybe they're grieving. Maybe they're just dealing with it in different ways. I don't know. I'm just saying this happens at the beginning. So now the audience is like, oh, atheists are cocks. And the prosecuting attorney against Melissa Joan Hart's talking to her lawyer, and he's like, I hate people like your client and what they stand for. They need to be stomped out. So one of the problems with this movie is when you start villainizing people, you have to clearly make someone a dick and clearly make someone a victim for the sake of your agenda. You start, logic has to go out the window now. One of the first things you notice about court movies is when people start saying, well, what do you think would have happened? What do you think would have happened? It even happens in here on one side of it where the other guy's like, objection, speculative. And the judge is like, sustained, watch it. However, when they need to be stomped out's talking to someone up there, and they need to make him a dick, he starts saying like, what do you think would have happened with that? What do you think would have happened with that? No one says objection speculative because he needs to be an asshole in this moment for the sake of making him a villain for the sake of the story. And while any movie out there has moments where logic does go out the window for the sake of making a villain, in a courtroom propaganda piece, it's just much more noticeable. And the whole concept of this movie is just strange to me because I feel like it could have been solved if Melissa Joan Hart's character just used logic and reason. If she had just used the argument like, well, yeah, I mentioned Jesus because this student said so. Jesus' teachings was like Martin Luther King's teachings, or it was Gandhi or something like that. And I was just like, yeah, they are similar. That's pretty much what she said. So at that point, you can make the argument as like, well, I was just addressing the religious belief of Martin Luther King Jr. and the similarities and comparisons thereof between the teachings of Martin Luther King Jr. and the one he followed at a religious level. However, you got to make this movie happen, so that argument never comes up when no one ever asks Melissa Joan Hart's side of the story of what happened. They were just like, did you mention Jesus? Yes. Oh, what were you thinking? Sue time, court. It just makes me pull back and just be like, I don't know that it would happen that way. You can look up on Google stories about teachers who have gone through some shit because they teach Jesus in the classroom, but generally speaking, I've found that they more or less start getting more sermony. She was never really sermony in this movie. And that just feeds into the point of this movie is an agenda. And they were like, well, it doesn't matter, Jeremy. We're making a point here. Stop with the logic. And then the movie goes into this whole fear-mongering thing where now, because this is happening, pastors need to send in their manuscripts or some shit. And then this guy's like, we've been ignoring this for too long and now it's upon us. Today we have to do this. Tomorrow, it's gonna be persecution. And I know that was my villain voice, but this dude was just straight up saying it like, guys, this is gonna happen. So pretty much the movie is telling the audience, guys, this is gonna happen. Maybe they're setting up for the sequel. I don't know. One of the pastors in the movie goes so far as to be like, we're at war. War? Holy shit! That's just a bold phrase. I feel like it's meant to scare the shit out of people. So you probably shouldn't use that. I'm just saying. Unless there is a war. Christian followers of mine, do you feel like you're at war? I'd like to know at this point, because that dude said you're at war. And then Melissa Joan Hart at a point in this movie gets this crazy, brilliant idea for her lawyer. She's like, let's just prove Jesus was real in a court. So at that point, I was just mentioning a real dude. So they get all these authors. I believe the authors played themselves. I don't know the authors' faces, so I have no idea. But this, you know, someone who wrote The Case for Jesus or something like that, and just a few others. They're all like, yeah, he had to have existed. And it's in a movie about court, I would have liked to have seen the other side. Like, why not have the prosecuting attorney be like, okay, this is why he didn't exist. It's kind of the fun of court movies, is seeing both sides go at it with logic and reason and facts and evidence. Not the feels. No one gives a shit about the feels in the courtroom. This is the classic case of a couple things. One, a character being written one way and then acting another. And two, a character being written a certain way and you not utilizing that angle at all. Her lawyer in this movie does not share her faith. She's like, are you a believer? Do you believe in Jesus? He's like, no. So I thought that was going to be a really cool element in the movie. They never explore that whatsoever. I thought he was going to be objectivized. He's really not. And that's proven by him going along with this idea that she gets where it's like, oh, let's just prove Jesus was real in court. Him not believing Jesus was real, you think he'd be like, no, let's not that. Let's not anything that. In fact, leave the court stuff to me, all right, kiddo? But no, he's like, oh, that's a great idea. That's perfect. Let's do it. If you were talking about a real person, then it's just you referencing a real person. Brilliant. I just don't know why he, not believing Jesus is real, would think that that was a good idea. It's like someone going to most human beings and be like, let's prove in court that Voldemort was real. Anyone brought that to my table and I was a lawyer, I'd be like, get out now. And then, well, spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you how the movie ends. Do you care? Do you care? No, you don't care, so I'm going to say it. It being a courtroom movie, the end is solved through magic. That's right. People pray, and then she gets off. And you could say, like, well, it's not because it just shows people praying, and then she ends up being found not guilty, or they rule in favor of her, rather than say not guilty. That's not how it goes down. Like, someone makes a phone call, and then this guy who's a leader of a band is at a concert. He's like, guys, all right, I have a friend, and she's in court right now, so we all need to pray. We need to pray hard for her, and everyone prays, and then it's like, not guilty because everyone prayed. It just seemed like magic. It seemed really cop-out stupid in terms of the narrative of a movie. Why not just it being a courtroom movie, lock down your case with logic and reason, rather than having prayers save the day? Why not make the argument I made earlier in this video? Guys, in the end, God's not dead too. It was just a blatant propaganda piece. There's no subtlety to the propaganda. It's just you're getting beaten over the head with one side of an agenda, and that just irritates people. Just in general, that should irritate most anybody. Unless you're making Passion of the Christ and you're like, guys, by the way, you're in for 2 hours of seeing this guy get his ass kicked for the sake of Catholic guilt. Period piece style. It's annoying. I wasn't connected with the character. I just feel like this movie was a lot of missed opportunities. I didn't hate the movie's guts by the end. I'm just saying it wasn't good. And I'm just saying I'm not gonna remember God's Not Dead 2 in T-1 day. Yep, already forgot. All right, guys, so here's a good question. What is your favorite movie that could be construed as propaganda? Me? Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Much more subtle than this movie and has a good message. AI, don't go there. But whatever yours is, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.